I sent an email to a complete stranger halfway around the globe. Her name is Jewel, and I don't think I have a hope in hell of ever hearing back from her. My emails go unanswered for weeks, and then I find a phone number. Dear Honorable Mrs. Jewel Howard Taylor, it was such an honor speaking to you on the phone today. Good day, my dear Avery. It was an equal honor to have spoken to you. I've been away from Monrovia for a period of Christian revival, renewal, and restoration. Kind regards, Jewel Taylor. The most unlikely of things happen. Jewel and I become pen pals. Jewel Howard Taylor, a senator in one of the poorest nations on earth. Plagued by civil wars, poverty, and most recently, Ebola. A woman who has just announced she is running for president of Liberia, West Africa. But that's not why I want to meet her. The reason I've been researching Liberia's tangled, bloody history and politics. The reason I'm getting ready to travel thousands of miles to West Africa in the hopes of a face-to-face meeting. It's because that woman I've made contact with, my new pen pal, well, it's because of her last name, Taylor. Liberia means land of the free in Latin, but for decades it's been the land of poor, the land of war. 250,000 people were slaughtered during 2 civil wars that decimated the country between 1989 and 2003. Those who survived were mutilated, raped, ravaged by armies of drugged-out child soldiers. Tiny puppets of ruthless warlords.
There were lots of atrocities. Some were very unimaginable, in the sense that almost every evil you think about was done publicly. They will slaughter you piece by piece. They will create something called gate, human gate. They will tie from intestine to an intestine. About 2% intestine can make a gate.
From its very beginning, it seems as though Liberia was set up to fail. In 1816, a group of white Americans created something that they called the American Colonization Society. The way they saw it, the growing number of freed black slaves in the States was becoming a problem. So they figured they'd ship them to somewhere in Africa. That somewhere, well, they now call it Liberia.
The thing is, the history of Liberia is not complete without that of the United States. Because you see, Liberia was founded by ex-slaves from the United States.
And when these U.S. freed slaves landed in what's now the capital of Monrovia, that new freedom switched something inside these settlers. They became the colonizers, inflicting on the native African population just what had been done to them back in the States.
They were slaves, but now they became slave masters and treat others as slaves. They try to impose if I would say, the lifestyle they brought with them on the indigenous they met here. All of those things boiled over and then brought the Civil War. Just that it took 133 years.
Even now on the streets of Monrovia, signs of the U.S. are everywhere, from the street names to the flag to the carbon copy Capitol building. The Liberian Constitution, almost a word-for-word replica of the American Constitution. The Capitol itself is named after U.S. President James Monroe. So how does my new pen pal Jewel figure into all this? Well, that tug of war between the freed American slaves and those who'd always lived here helped create a man named Charles Taylor. One of the most brutal, ruthless dictators in African history.
I leave you with these parting words. God willing, I will be back.
This is Charles Taylor being led to the International War Crimes Tribunal at The Hague back in 2012. He was found guilty of war crimes, including terror, murder, and rape, sentenced to 50 years in prison. Not for crimes in Liberia, where no one has ever been punished, but for his involvement in the bloody civil war in neighboring Sierra Leone. The judge described his crimes as some of the most heinous and brutal recorded in human history. The woman at his side during this reign of brutality is the woman who now wants to run the very country he's credited with ravaging. The woman who's agreed to meet me, Jewel Howard Taylor. I have so many questions. How could she stand by her man? What did she know? Could the people of Liberia even think about electing Charles Taylor's ex-wife as president? I broached the idea of an interview. And then the emails from Jewel stop. I sent her email after email after email, and not a word. Just one day before my flight is set to leave, a short response. Good AM, Avery. Please call me when you arrive in Monrovia. Friday seems okay, Jewel. Friday seems okay is not exactly the confirmation I'm looking for, but it's all I can get. My camera equipment is pretty basic. My shooting is even less sophisticated. And I've never shot my own interviews before. But I make the journey from Toronto, Canada, to Liberia, West Africa. Leaving Canada for Liberia, I'm feeling a little nervous about the journey ahead. It's one thing to be the pen pal of a warlord's wife. It's something else entirely to actually sit face to face and meet her. This is the capital of Liberia, Monrovia, and my meeting with Jewel has already hit a snag. So we went to the Capitol building for the interview at 10 a.m., but we're told that Jewel is not going to be available until noon. And we were also told, because I was wearing all of the airplane clothes, that women aren't allowed into the Capitol building in jeans, luckily, or pants. Luckily, our bags have been found. We just left the airline, got to change into my outfit. We're heading back now to the Capitol building and Jewel Taylor. This is the state Capitol building. Through the main foyer and up on the second floor, partway down the hallway, is Jewel's office. And this is Jewel, a portrait of Jesus above her head, a Bible placed at her side. The walls of her small office are dotted with photos from a time I would have thought she wouldn't want reminders of.
Jack Chirac, his wife, and Charles and I, we went to France for the Franco-African Summit. He was just telling me how beautiful I look. You're such a beautiful, elegant young lady. And so I was laughing. So.
Just under that, a picture Jewel knows Hillary Clinton wouldn't necessarily be showing off, side by side with a warlord's wife.
This is the famous picture with Hillary and I. You know, I was thinking the other day when people come and they ask, I say, I bet if she's asked, she might say, hey, that was before things got really crazy, but she's actually a positive role model of mine.
What did she write up there?
Yeah, she did. To Jewel Howard Taylor with friendship and best wishes.
The tour over, Jewel and I get ready to talk.
Excuse me for one moment. Go ahead. Call and reschedule. Tatas, you want to bring my roses from Denmark and just set it here? I think it might be a good.
Those two guys work for Jewel, and they stayed in the room the entire time. One of them videotaped our conversation, which lasted almost an hour.
Yeah, take your time.
Tiny little bit more.
Move some of this junk.
That's my wife, Mel, helping me get all the equipment ready for our interview.
Can you just see if this shot is okay? You're not getting this into in the camera at all?
Not at all.
Tatas, you want to move that plastic chair?
Yes, please.
Is that shot good?
Yeah. You won't mind if I'm just standing behind you?
I don't mind.
It's only because if then otherwise she'll be
I don't want to be in the
I don't
shot.
mind.
I promise not to jump on you.
I don't mind.
Having Mel in the room is making me a little nervous. And it's because my pen pal, the second most powerful woman in Liberia, tried to bring in a law that would make homosexuality a crime, punishable by death.
Firstly, thank you so much for coming, agreeing to meet with me.
It's a pleasure to sit with you.
I'm sorry for having called you during your when you were in session once.
It's
I called.
okay.
She's like, Avery, I'm in session.
I know it's important, and I'm happy that someone like you, with the kind of coverage you had, would say, well, let's go find out what this story is, because it gives me a chance to give my side of the story.
All those questions I had back in Canada, they feel a little bit tricky to ask now that I'm sitting here face to face with such a gracious and welcoming woman.
I think to me what fascinated me so much about you is just, as I was mentioning, in our country, there's, our new prime minister has had to live in the legacy of his father. The Clintons, Hillary has to live in the legacy of Bill. And it just surprises me that with the legacy of your ex-husband, that here you are 9 years a senator and running for president of a country where your ex-husband is considered to be a warlord who carried out some pretty horrific crimes.
Every time I go out there, I know people are watching and they're waiting to see how I behave and how I act. And if all of the perceptions that people think about me are real.
But do you think that people just feel as though, since you were by Charles Taylor's side, that you must have known what was going on, that you must have been involved with it?
And it's easy to say that, but any woman will tell you, who's married, will tell you that men keep closets and they deal with you at different levels. Do women have a chance to change all of our husbands? I don't think Hillary was able to change Bill. He's who he is. She's still who she is. And I can say again, as I've said over the last 10 years, I had no idea. I was not this first lady saying, yes, let's go cut off the arms and legs of people. I wasn't involved at that level. And even if I were a wife of a mass murderer, I don't think I should be held responsible. I haven't heard the wives of bin Laden being charged with the crimes he committed because they were women. And the law says that crimes should not be transferable.
Do you still stay in contact with him?
We have children, yes, we talk from time to time.
And how is
There's
he?
a household of Taylor children that I'm responsible for.
And does he support your bid for presidency? Is he proud of you?
But we haven't talked about it.
Haven't told him?
No, we haven't talked about it. He's incarcerated in England and he's barred from getting involved in political activities.
And here's what might surprise you most about running for president with the last name of Taylor.
Your last name isn't actually a hindrance in your political life.
No, it's not. It's a positive.
It's helped you.
Yes, it has. Charles Taylor is still very popular in Liberia. That name is not a negative name for me at all as I travel to the length and breadth of Liberia.
You heard her right. Having the last name of Taylor actually helps Jewel's political prospects. In fact, this political analyst tells me if it was Charles Taylor running for election, well, listen to his prediction.
If you were to bring Charles Taylor today and organize an election, he will win 80%, landslide, more than he did before. Well, Taylor was bad, but when he was here, we were buying a bag of rice, $500 Liberian dollars. Now you're paying for a bag of rice, 50 United States dollars. So we think if he come back, it's gonna be better. It's like the saying, better to live with the devil you know than the angel you've not seen.
You're likely wondering, how can that be? How can the Taylor name have outlasted the atrocities? Well, this gruesome video from 1990, right before Charles Taylor took power, gives some perspective.
No! That is different, man! I said, listen to everything, man!
The man being held down on the ground is President Samuel Doe, the leader of Liberia before Charles Taylor. And that guy, being fanned by a woman with 2 cans of Budweiser in front of him, is rebel leader Prince Johnson. He worked hand in hand with Charles Taylor to overthrow Doe. This video was broadcast live on Liberian TV.
I'm a humanitarian.
Then President Doe, surrounded by rebels, had his ear cut off as the cameras were rolling. He was later executed. Montgomery Young was there that night when rebel forces stormed the presidential palace. All these years later, he's scraping by as a security guard.
So Montgomery, I'm just going to put this. Can you take this microphone and put it up under your shirt? And I'm just going to snap it on here. So if you undo your shirt for 1 second.
I met him when he was on duty outside a house I was staying at in rural Liberia. He told me about his time as presidential bodyguard to Samuel Doe.
Certain soldiers were listed to be executed, and I was among those. 4 of my friends as presidential guards were killed brutally in the street. I was a wanted man on the list, as those former bodyguards Taylor wanted to see me killed.
You had a target on your back.
Fine. This is what escaped me from Monrovia, and this is why today is making me 13 years now. I have not seen the face of Monrovia.
Prince Johnson has never been charged in Doe's torture or murder. Flash forward to 2017. Prince Johnson, also a senator in Liberia, is, just like Jewel, running for president. The looming presidential elections are to replace this woman who recently hosted Prime Minister Trudeau on a visit to Liberia. Ellen Johnson Sirleaf is a Nobel Prize-winning international darling, the first woman to be elected president of a country in Africa. But she too has murky ties to Liberia's monstrous past. She has admitted to funding Charles Taylor and his rebels during the early years of the Civil War. All of that to explain that when war rages for decades like it did in Liberia, few have clean hands.
There haven't been a court set up for the crimes that were committed in Liberia. The reason is because most of the people who financed and prosecuted the war are part and parcel of the government. So they will not bring a court against themselves.
I'm sitting face to face with the most unlikely of pen pals, the ex-wife of a warlord who has a shot at becoming the next president of the very country he brutalized. You might notice a little bit of a stammer in my voice as I ask the next question, knowing my wife Mel is sitting just behind me off camera.
On gay rights, marriage and the rest, you chuckle. You would support a kill the gay, I don't know if you would call that here, but you would support capital punishment for homosexuality?
And you know, funny thing, I got a letter today. I had applied a year ago for a British visa, and I submitted all of my paperwork, and they kept my passport for a whole year. As I was coming this morning, I got a chance to read it, and I laughed. Your anti-homosexual views have been widely publicized. In 2012, you put forward a bill that would have carried the death penalty for homosexual acts. I'm like, because one of the reasons I was denied, according to this letter that was sent to me, was that I had proffered a bill for capital punishment for gay people. And that's not the truth.
So where did the confusion come in?
I have no idea. This is what is in this letter from the British government to me, saying that I have called for capital punishment of people involved in gay marriages, and that is not the truth.
Is it a crime here in Liberia? Is there a...
Sodomy is a crime, but there's no crime against gay marriages. You have a copy of that bill?
Same-sex marriage.
Yeah.
Let me find one.
So we need to find one because it would be good for her to see. Yeah.
You can have this just for the letter.
So what else do they say in there?
Well, I have refused your visa application because I'm not satisfied that you meet the requirements. You were married to Charles Taylor while he held office as the president of Liberia when he committed crimes for which he was subsequently convicted, namely for aiding and abetting war crimes and committing crimes against humanity. I judge that you were aware of and benefited financially from his activities. During your marriage, you played an active role in politics, and even after your divorce from Mr. Taylor, you have continued to be a supporter and apologist for him. The United Nations has also accused you of being involved in diamonds for arms trading. Wow.
But the Kill the Gays bill does seem to be Jewel's handiwork. This is the copy she gave me. It clearly calls for gay marriage to be made a first-degree felony crime. The sentence for that ranges from 10 years behind bars to death. Jewel's bill was voted down, but it's still hard to reconcile the fact that if Mel and I had lived in Liberia under Jewel Taylor's watch, we could have faced death. Despite this, Jewel doesn't come off as the monster I'd imagined back in Canada.
Of Louis Farrakhan, the Nation of Islam. Yeah. I have some controversial people.
She's articulate, educated, a feminist who defied her country's, even her own family's, expectations.
Politics is the art of what's possible. And I think everything's possible. People didn't believe there would ever be a female president for Liberia. I heard my father say that. I heard my grandfather say that. So I'm lucky to be in this generation that we've actually seen this glass ceiling broken.
This is a woman with degrees in law and economics, an advocate for education who seems to have disassociated from the fact that she had a front row seat as her husband robbed an entire generation of any education, turning school kids into bloodthirsty soldiers. My sense is that Jewel really is as complicated as the country she hopes to lead. She's an international pariah, but despite it all, she's still Liberia's daughter.
All I've done as an individual is try to impact my generation in a positive way, to be a role model, and to help to bring my country out of crisis. And I think that superseded the international cloud of, hey, maybe she's a pariah in the international community, but she's still our daughter and we love her, and I think if given a chance, she will work for us. I don't think I should be looked at with the lenses of what might have happened or did happen or imagined to have happened during the tenure of President Taylor. I think it is my right as an individual to work for my country, to continue to deliver on the promises that our people are hoping for. And I think my heart is in the right place. I might not get that chance, I know that, but I'll continue to work and do what I can. And hopefully one day we'll pass the Rubicon.
Well, it was a pleasure to have met you, and I thank you so much for agreeing to chat with me.
Thank you for making me do this interview. I'm happy that we got a chance to meet, and I'm here if you need to talk. I'm just a telephone call away. Fellow Liberians.
Following our interview, Jewel dropped her bid for presidency. Instead, she's now the running mate to this man, a renowned soccer star named George Weah. Jewel's ex-husband, Charles Taylor, has just been accused of interfering in the upcoming election from his jail cell. The claim that he has offered Weah access to millions of dollars of missing money in exchange for taking on Jewel as vice president. It seems only right that our relationship ends the way it began, as pen pals. Good morning, Avery. I decided to accept the supporting role as vice president because of the negative sentiments about President Sirleaf and female leadership in our nation. As VP, it will give me a platform to work for my nation and change the perception. I know my time will come. Kind regards, Jewel. Good morning, Jewel. Our latest correspondence is the perfect ending to my documentary. While we both come from very different backgrounds and beliefs, I would love to come back to your country. And until then, I'll be watching from afar as the votes are counted. My very best to you, Avery.